Well, good evening. This is Ruth Polston, and I'm coming to you from the Life That Wins. And I thank you for writing this week, and I love to hear from you and love to know that whatever we have had a part in, that God has blessed you with it. And tonight I'd just like to share something that I think is pretty common to us all, and that is when Jesus is late, because he doesn't work on our clock. So I'm just going to put a little music to it right now. Where there is no problem too deep, God cannot solve it. There is no mountain too tall, he cannot move it. There is no sorrow too deep, he cannot heal it. There is no comfort you need, he cannot solve it. If he carried the weight of the world upon his shoulders, I know, my brother, that he will carry you. If he carried the weight of the world upon his shoulders, I know, my sister, that he will carry you. All right. Well, what do you say? We just see what happens sometimes when Jesus is late. Now, I like the fact that Jesus had kind of a home while he was here on this earth, and he had some place to go that he felt comfortable, and it wasn't the kind you and I would probably think of, because everybody there had his very strong temperaments, but it was Mary and Martha and Lazarus. Well, I think you know enough about that to know that Martha was a doer, and everything had to be perfect in her house. She cooked, she shined, and she didn't want anything coming across that was just halfway. But now Mary was different. Mary wanted to sit in her room and meditate and be in solitude and pray and talk to Jesus in her spirit. So, but Lazarus, he didn't do much, and I always thought sort of like he must have been sort of a couch potato. But they all loved each other, which is neat. So Lazarus got sick, and Jesus was not in the neighborhood. Did you ever feel like you had a problem and Jesus wasn't anywhere to be found? Well, that's the pickle that they found themselves in. But they sent word because they had heard that he was in Jordan, even though that was quite a ways away. Jesus loved Lazarus, and they said, well, we know Jesus would come. He loves us. He loves Lazarus. And Lazarus is so sick. Jesus did get the word, but he didn't come. Now, I like clocks. If you were in my apartment, you will see I'm probably a slave to clocks, because clocks rule us. And if we're not in time for something, we have to pay the consequences, don't we? So I have a schedule, and I have to be there for that particular appointment. Well, Jesus has his own time clock, and it's not like ours. Ours is always now, right now. Yeah, come Lord, and come now. But Jesus, never in a hurry. No, he already knows what he'll do. So he just takes his time. And he's always going to want to show us a side of himself that we didn't know before the problem. So, let's kind of see what happens here. Lazarus died. And sometimes our problems, they do kind of die on our hands. But you know, Jesus was in touch all the time. And he said to his disciples after about 2 days, and Lazarus is already dead, he said, I think we should go up to Bethany because Lazarus is asleep. And so good old Thomas woke up and says, well, if he's asleep, let's go take a nap with him. They thought, that's a funny one. Oh, Jesus said, no, I'll tell you, the way you're looking at it, he's dead. Now, you know, Jesus has a way of redefining our problems. We always said, oh, it's dead. Where Jesus said, no, it's asleep. You can wake up somebody that's asleep, and that's the way it's going to be in the resurrection. So they took the journey to get there, and when he said Lazarus was dead, they were ready to pack and go, yeah. So as they got closer, why, a runner ran ahead. Now, the funeral's over, and they've already, poor Martha, she was so busy. I mean, she had to take care of the grave, probably the wrapping of the body. They had to hire mourners. How would you like to do that for your funeral? But that's what they did. They had to hire people that will cry behind the body and so forth. She had to be meticulous. But now Lazarus is dead. So she started cleaning up at the house, and somebody comes running and said, Jesus is on the road. Well, she took off like a bullet. And she ran to meet Jesus and get away from the crowd so she could just have the time to be alone with him. And you know what the first thing she said was? Why? Oh, our whys. They get us in trouble, don't they? Why weren't you here? If you'd have been here, we know what you've done. We've watched you. We've seen you. We know you. You've healed the blind, the lepers, the cripples. Lazarus? Yeah, you would have healed him if you'd been here. And so Jesus understood Martha. And he said, well, Martha? He said, I don't know that you really know who I am. Who do you think I am? And she thought about it a little bit. Well, he said, your brother's not going to die. No, he's not going to be dead. And she said, well, I know he's going to rise in the resurrection. I've got that all figured out. No. He said, your brother will rise again. And so she says, well, yeah, now she's beginning to think. Well, I know whatever the Father says, whatever you ask him, he'll do it. Because he does everything. You and the Father are together. And even now, yeah, Jesus said, yeah, even now, Martha. And Jesus waits for us to give him that little flicker of faith so he can work with it. And now he had it. Come on, Martha, let's go to the grave. Even now. And so Martha goes out, and she's kind of bug-eyed, and she gets closer and closer, and they called for Mary, and she was alone in her sorrow and everything, and she came out, I guess the first thing she said, why? Kind of runs in the family, I guess. So the whys were very prevalent. And then when they got there, poor Martha, she had second thoughts. She said, Jesus, this has been 4 days, and he really smells now. Is this a good idea? So Jesus said, yeah, it's a good idea. So all of a sudden, Jesus said, and the whole crowd are watching him, and he said, Father, I know that you always hear me when I ask. And you know, he said he didn't do that for his sake. He could have just said, Lord, I know you hear me. No, he made it loud enough for them to all hear because he wanted them to know who he was, the Son of the living God. And so anyway, they were all on tiptoe. Then he belched out with a real loud voice and said, Lazarus, come forth. And you know what happened, don't you? It's a good thing he said Lazarus, because probably the whole 9 yards bodies would have probably come leaping out. But here he came, and it was the tradition to wind them all up in bandages. So when he came out, he was hopping. They had already rolled away the stone, so the stone wasn't a problem. But it wasn't a problem anyway. He could have walked right through it. But Jesus let them partake in the miracle, so they could say, "Did you see when I rolled that stone away?" Jesus is so cool. And then he said, "Loose him and let him go." So they just flew on the bandages and began to unwrap him. And do you know what? It's our job. People sometimes get raised from something. They get out of their sins. But you know, they need to be unwrapped. They have to get acquainted with this new life. And they have bandages. When you came to the Lord, I'm sure you had bandages too. And somebody took off those bandages just one at a time. I'm sure they were just running up in a ball and throwing them away. And probably Martha was the ringleader of them all. But in a few days, they had a big party at Martha's house. And the Bible said that Jesus and Lazarus were there. Now, you know that at that time, the Pharisees always came. Wherever there was something going on, they showed up. So they showed up, and they folded their hands, and they looked around her, and they said, "You know, this is a very serious problem. Yeah, what do you think we ought to do?" So they said, "Kill him." Who? Jesus. Well, if we do, then we got to kill Lazarus too. Yeah, kill Lazarus too. And you know, the devil always wants to kill the evidence, because Lazarus is evidence. Whatever you've prayed, and God has taken off the bandages and made something new in your life, I tell you, the evidence causes a problem for somebody that doesn't want to believe. They like to kill it. But thank God he was there. So I just want to tell you that there is healing for whatever you're praying for. There is healing in this house. There is healing in this house. Manifested peace to calm troubled hearts with healing balm. There is healing in this house. Resurrection in this place. There is mercy. There is love. There is grace. Bring your heavy burdens now. Leave them here where they belong.